While I was making the challenge, I decided to post it to the forum just to see what other people thought.
Okay, I'm gonna give this a shot.
This might be something.
Let me just message him.
What?
We discovered that we were both single.
We need something in common, and The Sims was the ultimate icebreaker. Yes!
The rest is history.
The Sims is a life simulation sandbox. Create a character, build a house, find romance, and start a family. It's a lot like real life, but with a few more kitchen fires. And you can date Santa Claus. You can have your life all planned out in-game. But IRL, it doesn't work like that. And one man is about to realize you find love in unexpected places. The rom-com, finding true love in The Sims.
The Sims 2, as soon as I heard it being announced, I was a college student at the time, more on the nerdy side of things, Dungeons and Dragons and board games. If there's any kind of free time, I'm playing this, and probably, into the wee morning. It was actually in The Sims 2, it came with a couple of pre-made families, and one of those families were the Brokes. There's Brandy, and then there's Justin and Bew, and she's...
I'm sorry. Bo.
I called him Bew. Or at
it's
least
not
that's
right.
I know it's not right. I'm bad with names.
So The Sims has been really important to me since Sims 1 came out. I was working as a veterinary technician at an animal hospital. Then I saw that The Sims 2 had come out, and I was a big fan of Sims 1, so I decided to give it a shot.
After playing X number of hours, and that's quite a few hours, I had pretty much done everything that the base game had to offer. What if I wrote a challenge that, imposed some artificial goals or artificial restrictions to make things harder on you? Let's tap into the game's potential to play through generations. So that's where the generational aspect of the Legacy Challenge kind of came in. And I found that really satisfying. It sort of scratched the same itch that playing the Brokes was. So as far as a sort of a framework to the uninitiated of what the Legacy Challenge is, essentially you start with a single Create a sim, and you can make them however you want, whatever personalities, whatever traits, perks, aspirations. You then have to basically buy a gigantic empty lot. Most of the time your early game is just sort of, furniture on a lawn while trying to get, your Sim's life together. Then the main progression is that your Sim finds a spouse, has a child, and that becomes your heir. And they, grow up and earn skills and find their own spouse and so on and so forth.
It's not unusual for players to come up with their own creative ways of making games more complex, but the Legacy Challenge is a particularly enduring example of that.
I was someone who would, make a family of 4 or 5 people, go in and play them, and then maybe get bored after the kids grew up to be adults and be like, okay, let's move on to another family.
So having that part where you're on that giant lot, working really, really hard and trying to grow this family and get attached to the characters is my favorite part of it. But having those multi-generational families can definitely get you so connected to a point where you're just craving to come back to the game instead of just leaving the saves and never touching them again.
It really made it a very different style of game.
The thing that appealed to me the most about the Legacy Challenge was the very first rule that you see when you play the Legacy Challenge is no cheats. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot.
The Sims forums at the time, I was fairly active on. While I was making the challenge, I decided to write it down and actually make little, self-imposed rules and, post it to chat, just to the forum, just to see, what other people thought. It was late at night. I posted it. I'm like, all right, I got class tomorrow. I got to go to bed. Went to bed, woke up in the morning. I'm like, all right, let me just see how my forum post did. And it just completely blew up. I'm like, how many replies does this thing have? What did I just do? What's going on? But the reception was really, really positive.
The rules that Pinstar created laid the foundations for players to become heroes in their own epic family sagas.
One thing I always loved about The Sims was that you could go anywhere and do anything, but sometimes having too many choices and too many options is just as like constraining as not having any options or choices. You knew where you were going to start, and then the story would create itself from there.
One way that legacy challenges really impact the Sims community as a whole is getting viewers to think differently about the game, that you're going to be so much more connected to these Sims. Playing a multi-generational family has you caring a lot more about what happens to your current Sim and the heir that you're currently working with, because you know what their parents went through and what their grandparents went through.
I must have struck a chord with the community, because it was adopted pretty quickly. In my entrepreneurial mind, because I was attending business school, I'm like, all right, I have some success here. I should capitalize a little on it. So I made the Legacy Challenge website to basically host the rules. But I also decided, you know what? This is a popular thing. Let's make a t-shirt.
Don't remember how I initially found it. I was like, oh, cool. I've never had a fandom shirt or a shirt of something that I've really enjoyed. And I was playing the Legacy Challenge probably for a couple of years at that point. And so that's how I got in contact with him.
Random message popped up. Hey, do you still have those for sale? I do. Do you have these sizes? Yeah, we certainly do.
We got to talking for a little while, and we discovered that we both lived in the same state. We were around the same age, and we were both single. So it kind of just took off from there. The rest is history.
Is somebody taking a bath?
Yeah, it's just the neighbors again.
That's the third time this week.
I know.
Hello.
So it kind of just, I don't know, we ended up talking for 4 hours that first time after I messaged him about the shirt.
Yeah, because when we were chatting, in addition to sort of a shared interest in games and The Sims, we found that we had a shared interest in dogs.
And at one point we were just kind of hanging out in the game, and we were like, we live pretty close to each other. We should try and meet up one time. And there was an event called Bark Fest. And so I took my dog and we went and we met up at this Bark Fest and hung out for a few hours.
Oh yeah, it was a fun time.
There's a lot of people who have forged relationships within the online realm to even have them come out of the online realm into real life. And then they have families. They still play the game together, but they forge those connections outside. And so those individual identities are just as important as that shared interest.
Yeah, he was definitely the flirter of the two of us. We were friends for like a few months before like anything really happened. I was pet sitting a friend's dog and we were just watching a movie, and all of a sudden he's like creeping up behind me with his arm and he's like trying to put it around me without like freaking me out too much, I guess.
Sounds creepier than I was trying to.
That's not what I meant. So I just kind of put my head back on it.
And I'm like, okay, this is good.
And I would say within 7 months of us being together, Brian actually ended up getting a job closer to where I live. And then maybe a few months after that, I ended up moving in with him. I think the ultimate want for the grilled cheese sim is to eat like 200 or 2,000 grilled cheese sandwiches in their lifetime or something like that.
Some absurd number where it's sort of a joke aspiration.
Aqua might get a treat in a second.
Yes!
Actually, that wasn't bad.
Yeah!
I was expecting it to go flying.
Yeah.
One of the more recent legacy challenges that I played, I had this matriarch, her name was Maria, and I loved this sim so much, and I made her an artist. And then I remember like 4 or 5 generations in, I actually had one of her like great grandchildren become an artist as well. And I got to put their paintings next to each other. So even though like Maria had passed away like generations ago and was no longer part of the family, like I actually teared up and like cried a little bit because it made me really emotional because of how connected I got to these Sims, which was really weird, but like wholesome.
Brian actually took me out to dinner and proposed, and it was very sweet.
Yep. Our wedding, so we had, indoor party, DJ, classic, wedding and whatnot.
We would occasionally like make Sims related jokes with each other.
Exactly,
like,
a little insider.
We'd be cooking dinner and we'd be like, oh, hopefully, you know, the house doesn't burn. There were even a few times where like if we were out to dinner, we would like jokingly like try to do some of the Sims flirty moves that they did.
I have to give The Sims credit for being the ultimate icebreaker. Both of us are very introverted. We need something in common, and The Sims was the ultimate icebreaker.
Like, so we would update the challenge as we could, and then we ended up finding out we were pregnant with our first son, and so as we were starting our own family, the Sims and the challenge itself started to go by the wayside. Honestly, having our own family and having our own house, I think, has been a lot easier. I always found Sims toddlers to be like really hard to manage because they were just in everything. They're honestly a lot easier than real toddlers.
Yes.
Who will do anything and everything to, you know, shove stuff up their nose or,
Yeah.
you know, spill stuff on the floor, that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
The Sims has been really important to me, and I feel like even if I'm not actively playing it at the time, it's one of those games that's going to always just be really important as time goes on.
Sims creators who are making these legacy challenge series on YouTube or on Twitch, and you'll have people coming in to watch, and they'll literally be like, I've never thought about playing this way, and they get attached to someone else's characters, and it really does influence them to go and play in a legacy challenge and get people to really care about characters in that way.
I was, at the time, utterly unrecognized for anything. I was also like, swinging and missing in the relationship department a lot. While, that wasn't my end goal when I made the challenge, like, hey, I'm gonna make a challenge to pick up chicks. That's kind of a stretch of the imagination, but it no doubt led to that, and I'm happy it did. Yeah. I'm very happy it did.
There's lots of similarities between The Sims and real life. You can find a partner, make a home together, raise a family. Brian created the Legacy Challenge because he wanted to make new rules for The Sims. And as a result, he and Christina now have a legacy of their own. And unlike The Sims, they haven't burnt down their kitchen.